Hello, welcome back. I hope everyone is very well. There's been a couple of things that I've thought to myself this past week of, am I getting old? Or have I always been like this? Because I've realized how obsessed I am with the changes in the seasons and noticing the birds. And I actually think I've always loved spring. I love that kind of everything coming alive again. I love hearing the birds in the trees and yeah, just all of these things going on. And yesterday I got out my Merlin app, the app that where you can listen to the different birds and I was seeing what was in our area. And then the starlings were in the trees, like loads of them. They were gathering. And I was like, it's really starting to feel like everything's coming alive, which also means that mowing the lawn will be happening more regularly again, doesn't it? But anyway, but the other thing that has happened is I decided that I would go more public with a little approach to fat loss myself because I've gained a little bit of weight over the winter. And if I'm completely honest, it probably is a little bit of weight gain over 2 winters, which I'll talk about in a minute, because I've been at a point where I've been very happy and content with my balance that I've had in life. But then I was thinking, after gaining a little bit of weight over this past winter, actually, I am ready to lose it. And there is a danger that if I don't make a concerted effort, that maybe next winter a little bit more will sneak on as well. So I decided to approach fat loss, but with my members, to do it with them and show you how it can be done in a way where you don't need to be tracking every single calorie and you don't need to be giving up everything you love. Like I have actually said to myself, I will show you the cake that I'm going to be having every week. It will probably be a Belgian bun this week, to be fair, but I am going to be eating cake. I'm just going to go with the no crap cake condition and make it less often more enjoyable. Now, I'm 4 days in to this approach. And the reason that it can work without tracking calories is because I'm aware of my calories. So I know what I'm kind of aiming for and I'm going meals first and I'm having an idea of what they are in advance. Now it's Thursday today. The weekend is coming up and obviously things can be thrown out a little bit different. I'm staying away this weekend, but I know that I can have a little bit more flexibility without everything going awry because I'm working within that calorie range as well. Ideally, I'd like it to average nearer the lower end of that range, but there is some flexibility. And I know also that even if I had a cake that was 500 calories, that's on average going to be absolutely fine. And I'm going with these meals that I know are higher in protein, higher in fiber, and planning those in. And then I can be more mindful around the snacks I'm having. And actually, I am eating. It's definitely more of a diet based snack, but I actually do really like it. I'm eating that jelly and yogurt thing that I made on Instagram. If you haven't seen it, I'll post a link to it in the show notes. But it's, well, I can just tell you, it's got 250 ml of boiling water, a packet of sugar-free jelly, which totally gave me diet vibes when I was opening it. I was like, oh, I don't think I like sugar-free jelly. I just like normal jelly. Anyway, I went with it. And then I added 250 grams of skyr and you mix it all up. And then she said to pour it between two glasses, but it's huge. So I've actually started making double, of course, because my husband likes them too, and putting it into 6 pots rather than the 4 that it should make. Because I actually think if I'm having that after dinner as a little bit of a sweet thing, then it feels like enough because it's such high volume. Anyway, having those things prepared really helps. Having my Thai noodle soup for lunchtime really helps. Having my breakfast that's made in advance really helps. But I'm a lazy prepper. So I'm not going to be spending hours doing this. So that's why overnight oats, the soup, which is in our app actually, but it's a Thai noodle soup. I make that because it's so easy to do. And then I'll eat with the family in the evening. I think that there's this belief that when we're approaching fat loss, that we need to be trying all these different meals. And while that's great, it's fantastic to try different meals. And I do like doing that too. We can eat fairly similar meals on rotation. And the pushback against that will be about variety for your gut health. And when we're thinking about having the variety in our diet, the advice that's put out there is to go for 30 different plant-based foods over the course of a week. But what people don't often realize is that that includes each individual spice that you're having. So maybe one day you're having your, I don't know, your chicken and pasta thing and you're putting oregano in it. And the next day you're putting basil in it, or even both together. And that's two. That's not just one, that's two different types. a yellow pepper and a red pepper are different again. And if you went with a pink lady apple one day and a jazz apple the next, that's another variety as well. So you can eat fairly similar meals each day and still get the variety that's meant to be good for your gut health as well. But I'm finding that is what's keeping it really simple for me. Just getting some bits organized in advance, knowing that I can eat with the family, being mindful of the other choices. Now, of course, I am only 4 days in, but I've done this before and I'm not really seeing it as a diet. I'm showing you that weight loss can happen as a result of doing this, but I'm seeing it more of a tidying up of the things that have started to slip. And by things that have started to slip, my meals are pretty good, but I have 2 teenage boys who are fairly hefty eaters. And I think what can easily happen if you live in a house like that is you suddenly find yourself actually eating slightly bigger portions as well in the evening, or they might be having a bit extra afterwards and you do too. It's just these little things that can happen that you have around the house. That's what's been happening for me. I would say activity is fine, so I've not really needed to change that either. It really does feel like I'm tidying up on the nutrition side and then sorting out the recovery side of things, because sleep hasn't been as good recently and that can change hunger levels as well. But the interesting thing is that I feel immediately better for just making a few little tweaks. I feel better in general, and I think it's being super organized ahead of time, which I do like to do anyway, but it's having that kind of clear path. But this could be linked a little bit to the fresh start mentality. You know, if you've got a bit of weight to lose at the beginning, you can be super motivated and it can feel harder later on. But I don't feel like I'm going to get out of the loop with that. I feel like doing it the way that I'm doing it, where I'm not feeling like I've got to track every single calorie, where I'm just continuing to do what I can and taking it as an average across the week, that these are habits I'm going to want to keep. So it's a good thing to do. But since I've announced that this is what I'm doing, I've had a lot of people say to me that they are also ready to lose their winter weight, their insulation, as they called it, that extra jacket that they put on, and so on. And I thought it would just be nice to come on and say, actually, a little bit of weight gain over winter is quite normal. It's normal for various reasons. And I think the obvious one is that over winter, we can move less. So in the summer, you've got those long days, you might have more spontaneous activity, you're getting out and about a bit more. In the winter, obviously, the days are much shorter, the weather can be worse, you might not be going out for a walk in the evening because it's dark. And this can mean that our just general activity, just that bits of movement here and there, what we could refer to as NEAT as well, the movement outside exercise, can reduce significantly. And if you listen to my last podcast where I spoke about losing weight without losing your mind, you might have heard me talk about NEAT, and it stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And it can include things like fidgeting and so on, housework and everything, but just that general movement. And I know for sure when I was living abroad and it was sunny all the time, I was definitely just more active. I don't feel like my steps have dropped off considerably, but they probably have a little bit from where they are in the summer, probably sit naturally a little bit higher in the summer. It's very hard for me to tell because I'm wearing a new watch and they all vary a little bit. The other thing that I think can really massively impact this over the winter, and for me, for sure it does, is the fact that those days of lower light, that lower light exposure, can actually impact our mood. And if we're completely honest, I think we've had less of those big, bright, sunny days than we have in previous years. It feels like it's been a very, very grey start to the year. And I know that when I have gone out and there's been a rare moment of sunshine, I felt instantly energized. It's felt so good. But that lower light and that impact on our mood can impact serotonin levels, and that can have us feeling a little bit hungrier. When we're feeling less motivated and low in mood, then we can find that we are craving slightly different meals as well. And it can have an impact on those hunger hormones. But you might also notice that you're feeling more tired, your motivation feels a bit lower. And of course, as I just said, that stronger drive for those comfort-based foods. And I said about myself, the poor sleep. I have definitely been sleeping worse over the winter. And when you're not sleeping so well, that can impact our ghrelin. And again, I mentioned this on my last podcast, but ghrelin is the hunger hormone, the one that makes you feel hungry. It's grrr, I'm hungry. And then we have our leptin, which is the satiety one. And poor sleep increases ghrelin and reduces leptin. Yay! And that combination can make those more energy dense foods harder to resist. Yeah, I would say that is 100% something that I experienced when I was really, really tired. And my tiredness, my not sleeping so well, probably started just before Christmas. And it's not something I normally struggle with, but I definitely found myself just really feeling like I wanted those sugar quick fixes. And I'm pretty good. Like I say, I'll have those meals, but I'm having to focus on reducing the picking. But hopefully sleep will be improved. I'm having, again, trying to go to bed nice and early and wind down to sleep. So really looking at those things that can help me keep that regular wake up time and regular sleep time as well. And I also wanted to mention vitamin D here. Low vitamin D isn't directly going to cause you to gain weight. But if you do have lower levels of vitamin D or you're vitamin D deficient even, then that can impact your mood. Then that can cause lower mood and reduce your energy as well. And it's very common, if you're not taking vitamin D supplements, it's very common for those of us living in the Northern Hemisphere to be vitamin D deficient. I actually got mine checked recently and they were bang on fine, but I would expect them to be. I went away in November, somewhere sunny, very lucky. And then I also do supplement with vitamin D as well. But it's absolutely can have those same sort of symptoms. And can I mention Christmas here? Would that be appropriate? We obviously eat a little bit more, or a lot of us eat a little bit more over Christmas. You can feel like you're being as mindful as possible. Now, Christmas itself isn't a problem, but those things can stay. We can end up starting at this point and then we might reduce it a little bit, but it can stay a little bit higher. It's almost like we've reset, but never gone quite back to base level. And that can obviously cause a bit of winter weight gain as well with those social events that we're having, the Christmas and party food, maybe a bit more alcohol as well. If we're meeting up with friends, maybe we're meeting them in pubs or bars rather than heading out to do any activities. And I was also interested on the evolutionary perspective of winter weight gain. Like, is it inbuilt into us to crave a little bit more food, to add a little bit more insulation because it's winter? And there is an element of this in the sense that there does seem to be seasonal patterns to our eating and our habits. As I mentioned above, with the fact that we maybe don't get out as much and we are craving those stodgier, more comfort-based meals. And there could be an element of the fact that this is what we've always done. And historically, of course, having a little bit more body fat would have helped our survival rates. We, of course, don't live with, we have now, of course, we live with a bit more of an abundance of food, so it doesn't really matter, but perhaps some of that biology does remain. But the thing is, I'm talking about weight gain being normal. It is, but really it's like 0.5 to a kilogram over the winter period. But I think what happens is we might gain only that over the winter period, but we also might have gained that the winter before and not really noticed it and then not lost it. I think normally people, if they get back into normal routines and normal habits, they don't necessarily need to focus on fat loss now. It might just happen as they increase their energy again, increase movement and so on again, get wanting different foods. But if they don't, I think that could be part of the point where we just gain a little bit of weight there and we hold it, maintain it through the summer seasons, and then we gain it a little bit more. So maybe you don't notice it to begin with, but then you're like, oh, I feel like I've gained quite a bit of weight. But maybe it is only half a kilo or a kilo over this winter period, but maybe it was the same the winter before. And I wonder, because I'm not somebody that weighs myself all the time. I go with how my clothes feel, and my jeans have felt fine. They felt good, like absolutely fine. And occasionally I do waist measurements, and actually it was that made me go, that has gone up a little bit. So there we are. And I thought, okay, so likely that I have gained a bit of weight, but it probably wasn't all this winter. There was probably a little bit last winter as well that I then maintained through the summer and then gained a bit more. But again, I think this is something to be aware of. Now, I have started weighing myself. There was part of me that was like, maybe I should show people you don't even need to weigh yourself, because you don't need to weigh yourself. But I decided to do it because I was like, well, that's another form of measurement. So I took body measurements. I didn't take loads, I'm going to be honest. I took my waist measurement, I took my thigh, and then I was getting really awkward with the tape measure. So I have only taken kind of waist and thigh, and then I have been getting on the scales each day so that I can look at the lowest weight of the week. It's very normal to get those false highs, but it's less common to get false lows unless you've been sick and you're very dehydrated. So I can take my weight across the week, and then I can look at the lowest point and go from there and see if it's trending down over time, understanding that it might go up at different points in my cycle. I'm not really worried about that, because as long as I'm focused on what I'm doing daily, then I think that it will be absolutely fine. And the other thing that I did and I'm going to do is I did some photos, and I will do these monthly as well. And again, it's never particularly nice standing in front of a camera. I actually wore shorts and a sports bra, but you're standing there, and I don't know why, but we always have to pose with a face that looks like it's in a passport photo or something. And I did them because I know that they will give me the best sort of comparison in the future. But again, I'm really focusing on just what I'm doing each day and how that's making me feel. So I've done those photos so that I can go, yeah, well done me, high five. But it is more about the daily actions. But I wanted to share that with you. And I also just wanted to say that I think it's also very common that we get that almost spring clean mentality with ourselves. So we end up just going, actually, now I feel ready after months of motivation being lower, and we think, what is wrong with me? I just really don't want to diet or think about being in a calorie deficit. That's not where my head is at, to suddenly feeling like, yes, I'm ready to go, I can do this. And I think it's almost the opposite reasons for why we don't feel like it. We're starting to see a bit more light out there, we're feeling a little bit more motivated, we are finding our mood has increased and we're feeling better. But also that fresh start, I spoke about it a little bit at the beginning. New year, we can have the fresh start feeling where it feels like a mental, psychological reset. We're ready to go. We feel like, yes, I can put that behind me. I'm ready to move on. Seasons can happen with that as well. So we can feel like we can put the winter behind us. Spring is here. We're ready to focus on looking our best. And yeah, there's probably an aesthetic reason for a lot of people as well, because I think in the winter, we're like covered up. And I think people are seeing that they're going to be getting their body out a little bit more, and maybe it's for that sort of confidence. But again, that might be the outcome that you want, but it all comes down to those daily actions. But I was actually thinking this. I saw in an Instagram reel, and it was talking about New Year being at the wrong time of year. Like, how dare it get us setting New Year's resolutions when the days are dark and our mood is low? And it is a bit like that, because you do see people that are like, right, that's it, I want to get into running, but they hate going outside when it's raining. You know, it's very hard going to get the motivation to start running and build the habit when it's so dark and it's struggling to fit it in. There is an argument for the fact that if you can do it then you can definitely do it all year round. But it does add that element of like, yeah, this is challenging anyway. Whereas coming into the spring can feel like such a lovely time to be setting goals. It feels like you're coming awake with everything else. And it really, really does feel like spring out there now, even if the weather hasn't quite caught up with our moods. But while we're going into this change, I've spoken a little bit about quite a lot about how I'm approaching this. And I am going to be sharing what I'm doing with you, but that doesn't mean that what I'm doing is going to be exactly right for you. So I can share my progress goals with you, the things that I am doing as a measure of progress. So my daily or weekly actions that will lead me to get to where I want to be. I have minimums and I have the push goals. And I broke this down, and I mentioned this on a previous podcast as well. I broke it down to movement, mindset, and nutrition, or mindset recovery. And I've written this into the app, and I can share with you what they are, or I can give you some examples. And then I'm going to tell you why it's so important that you start where you are. So my movement is consistent anyway, and I've put on there optimal 3 strength sessions per week, 3 runs per week, but I have put in there like in brackets minimum of 2, because it will depend on recovery. But really, optimal is 3 runs a week. And then I've said some intentional movement away from my desk. My minimum is to maintain my steps, ideally in that place that's away from my desk, not on a walk pad. But if you're not currently doing any strength training and you say to yourself, yeah, my optimal is 3 strength sessions per week, my minimum is going to be 2 strength sessions a week, you might be better. There's a couple of arguments for and against here. You might be better thinking about what you can realistically manage with your life now. Maybe in the past you've done 3 strength sessions a week and you'd like to get back to doing that again, but life is full on and busy. So it might be that you say, actually, my minimum's 1, or it might be my optimal is 3 strength sessions a week, but my minimum is still going to be 3 strength sessions a week. But I'm going to say that it can just be 10 minutes of strength each time. So you're getting into the habit of doing it at the same time each week on the same day, or whatever it is that works for you. So you have to think about your life, how busy it is, when you can fit it in, and what's going to help you keeping that habit. I have done for my nutrition, there is not a mention of calories on my nutrition targets here, but I've said plan meals in advance. And that means I am being aware of my calories, prioritize protein and fiber, be mindful of evening portions with my boys, and intentional cake. And then my minimum is 3 meals with protein. If you're currently not finding that you're getting any protein in your meals at all, you feel like your diet is not where you want it to be, your minimum might be aiming for protein at breakfast only, and that's fine. It's looking to improve on where you are. The danger is that fresh start mentality can mean that we go, I can do it all. I can do everything. I'm absolutely fine. And I believe that you can, but I do think you need a backup plan, because there is an element of going, okay, I'm setting these minimums and then feeling like that's all I need to aim for. Whereas we do also want something to push for. I think we feel so proud of ourselves when we manage to do the things that we say we want to do. And so having those where you can be like, this week I'm feeling really good. This week work is busier, children are doing whatever, I can go to that. So make sure you're taking time to look at what's worked for you in the past and what hasn't, and know that fresh start is great. You can go all in, but have a backup plan for when you start feeling those feelings of overwhelm kick in. And something else I was thinking about, and I've thought about this a lot because we're doing a spring challenge starting on Monday. Come and join us. It's going to be such a lovely one. We are doing progress goals, as always. At the beginning of every single challenge that we do, we look at our progress goals, because they can change over time. So over the winter, people might not have been wanting to push as hard for fat loss, but now they're in that spring and the mentality's there and they know that I'm doing it with them. That's definitely seems to have got a few more people chatting about it, but the motivation can be higher. So we're going to go progress goals first and break those down. But then we're going to do weekly challenges. And it's not because I expect a habit to be built over a week. It's because when we're quite specific and we know, like, this is what I'm aiming to do, that can help us really stick to it. So the first week of our challenge, we're going to be looking at having some water. And I've said first thing, but we also need to think about how we can make that easier to do. Are we going to put some water next to the bed in the evening so that we get up and we drink that? Or are we going to put a glass next to the kettle? Will you just remember, it's trying to make these things easier, and being as specific as possible can make it stick over time. And over the 8 weeks of our spring challenge, we're going to be doing a different habit each week. And the aim is that we get enough time just to see if it makes a difference to us. So we're saying, I'm going to stick to this definitely for this 1 week. The habits are things that can make a big difference to fat loss because of the ripple effect that they can have, because they have us thinking ahead or they have us relaxing a little bit more. But these habits can make such a big difference. But a week isn't enough for them to become a habit, but it is enough for you to test them out. So then if that works for you and you're thinking, yes, this is something I can fully commit to, that might be then added to a progress goal. But the point is, we're challenging ourselves each week, which feels manageable. So I'm dead excited about that challenge as well. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and I've actually seen so much more of this on social media recently, is having these food rules. Now, food rules can feel quite comforting. If you set yourself a rule, you can be like, right, I know, like I said about being specific, I know that I shouldn't eat that food because that is higher in fat. I'm not going to have it. But over time, when we label foods as bad or good or excellent, as I've seen in these reels recently, that does nothing for our relationship with food. And then it does lead to that pass fail mentality in the yo-yo cycle. You have one of these things and you're like, oh, well, I fucked it now anyway. And then you give up. And I'm not saying you do that every time. There might be foods that you do avoid because you're like, for me, they don't hit it. Like maybe they're my version of crap cake. But if you're doing that all the time and you're seeing these messages all the time, it can be really damaging. And then on the flip side, people think that flexible dieting is this thing where you have to just use intuition and you eat whatever you like. And it's not that either. Flexible just means that you're going to try and eat those foods that are going to keep you full of plenty of protein, plenty of fiber, higher volume if you've got a fat loss goal as well. But then there's always room for those other foods. It's the less often, more enjoyable approach. Labeling them as bad doesn't make any sense long term for our relationship with food. And those foods serve a different purpose. So if we're thinking, I mean, some of the versions of this that I've seen online were putting in the bad foods, peanut butter, and that will be because it's like calorie dense. It's still got plenty of nutritional benefits to it. You just need to be aware of portion size. However, if we're thinking about more traditional foods that women might say it's naughty or it's bad or whatever it is, those foods serve a different purpose. They feel like they're purely there for enjoyment. So, and my belief actually is if we have them less often, we enjoy them more. So it's worth bearing that in mind. And it's why I am intentionally keeping cake in. I'm not setting rules around it. It's like, I will have cake every week at this time. If I feel like cake at that time, I will have it then. But what I'm doing is I'm giving myself flexibility to have some, but it's got to be incredible. And I'm not going to be having it every day, mindlessly picking at stuff. But labeling good, bad is not going to be very good at all. And this also slipped in a little bit to another comment that I had on Instagram where somebody noticed that I'd used Philadelphia cream cheese. Now, actually, the interesting thing was this, is that we normally use supermarket cream cheese because it's cheaper, actually, and it seems better, if anything. So we normally buy the supermarket one. But I didn't have a tub and I popped to our local co-op and picked up whatever they had to do for the recipe reel. And it was Philadelphia. And a lady commented to say, can you please stop recommending people have Philadelphia because it's so ultra processed compared to others. Now it has got more stabilizers and so on. It is more ultra processed, but in the same way that we don't want to label foods as bad, if we're eating our whole diet full of ultra processed foods, then we might want to look at that. But again, if you're having a majority of your foods that are coming from these minimally processed sources, you're cooking food at home yourself, demonizing that one thing isn't going to be any good for you. Like, we have to use an element of common sense here with how much we're having these things. There is a danger of really just having black and white. I remember reading the book about ultra processed food. Was it Ultra Processed People? I thought it was brilliant, but it does scare you a little bit. And then I was looking at the thing. So that's how I knew about the cream cheeses, because I remember looking at all of the packets and being like, oh my goodness, wouldn't you be eating anything really from any packet if you did that, unless it was like frozen food. And then I kind of started using a bit more logic, going, well, there's definitely some that aren't going to be more processed or more ultra processed than others, like crisps, chocolate, biscuits, certain breads, even from the supermarkets, fancy ones that have got other things in them. We can use our common sense and say that is not going to be the same processing as olives in brine, for example, which actually, in theory, have stabilizers and things to keep them in there. The point is, with all of these things, we just want to have a look at the big picture over the week and just see if we are going with a balanced approach. And I think that's my little preach on that over. But regardless, let me know if you are focusing on fat loss, if you're somebody that's felt like you're ready for a bit of a functional spring clean on yourself, if you're ready to just come outside and see the light in this springtime, or whether you're just carrying on as normal. I would love to know. I do love hearing how you're getting on. Love to chat. You can find me on Instagram and let me know on there. It's at Ruth McFit, or you can just let me know in the comments here. Like I said, I absolutely love hearing how you're all getting on, what you're focusing on, and what your progress goals might be. Anyway, speak soon. Goodbye.